Welcome back to Behind the Brief, the podcast where we talk about the real, unfiltered side of marketing. And today we have Micah with us, a very talented and amazing marketer. Micah is a fractional senior PMM specializing in 0 to 1 product marketing and organic growth for early stage SaaS startups. Previously, she has worked at startups as head of growth at Growth Mentor. Micah is also building her own app for creative writers, EmberWrite, with a co-founder, Paul Burgess. Check out her profile in the description below and contact her directly for more on her work. So Micah, let's get it started.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the great introduction, Shruti. I really appreciate it. Super excited to be here today.
So, as a fractional senior PMM, you have worked with multiple startups. So, what's the most common challenge you see early stage founders face when it comes to product marketing, and how do you help them overcome it?
Yep. So I would say the number one thing is, do they know their customers well enough? And this has a tendency to vary from founder to founder and company to company. So there are some companies that basically from the start end up investing in a lot of customer knowledge, a lot of buyer knowledge, things like that. And those companies generally have an edge when it comes to product marketing, because what that does for them is that gives them a base to pull from, because what user research does is it actually makes every function of the company easier. So basically for sales, this makes it easier for sales to address certain objections. For marketing, this makes it easier for them to create copy that resonates. For product marketing specifically, this serves as a great way to start getting a base for the positioning and messaging, because you're understanding where these customers are coming from. And then for product, it actually helps you create features that your users want to see. So all of this basically ties in, and I would say that's probably the number one thing that is always the first thing I check for whenever I am working with a new client is, hey, what have you guys done as far as user research? Are you guys actively chatting with your clients? Are there sales calls that I can listen to, things like that, because all of that is really going to form the backbone of all of your future product marketing work, especially if you're starting from zero. And that's the big thing, is that in these cases, we're assuming that this is something that they have no product market functioning already existing. Basically, this has not been formally documented, anything like that. So if you're starting from scratch, that's your base.
That's really interesting, actually, because early stage startup founders do have a lot of misconceptions about they think that it's a product market fit, but in real it's not. Tell me something about one tactic that you could have used to drive organic growth for a 0 to 1 SaaS product.
So whenever I'm looking at your options for levers for a company, I am looking at what is going to be that initial go-to-market motions. There's essentially 7 of these that pop up, and I know I am probably going to miss one off the top of my head, but it is an inbound motion, an outbound motion, partnerships, goodness gracious, paid ads, community, and there are always 2 that I completely forget about. But with those, the most common ones that I tend to lean on are inbound, community, partnerships. Within inbound, we get into what is going to be your distribution method, because this is essentially content marketing. But in order for content marketing to be effective, you have to figure out how to distribute it, right? And there's really 2 main funnels for that, or there have been in the last 5 to 10 years or so. You have SEO-driven content marketing on one side, and then you have social media-driven content marketing on the other. And within that, in the last couple of years, that has really, really evolved very quickly. With the rise of AI, you're seeing more and more traffic turning into that zero-click content that Spark Toro and Amanda Navidad coined on that term. So basically, that's popping up more and more. I think it's now gone to, something like 2/3 of Google searches now don't end in a no clicks, essentially. So what you're seeing is that people are getting their answers from a lot of those AI summaries when it comes to the SEO side of things. We're getting to a point to where that's probably going to have to shift how people are dealing with their content marketing on that SEO side. Unfortunately, I don't know that I have answers for that yet. I think that's something that a lot more specialized SEOs are figuring out at the moment, and they are doing a very good job of it. Obviously, being a product marketer, the SEO is not necessarily my specialty, but that's always one that, in the past I've looked at and said, okay, could this be a possibility that we do a lot of this for SEO distribution? Because that path has kind of gotten to where that's going to be a little bit narrower and a little bit more specific. And there's some people saying now that it's actually going to evolve into a AI content play, essentially. So it's going to be AIEO, so optimizing for ChatGPT, optimizing for Claude, Perplexity, all of these. That one's going to be an interesting field, and I think is one that people should keep an eye on, because I think people are seeing some traffic driving from that. On to the other side of the distribution spectrum, which is that social media spectrum. And now what we're running into is the fact that organic reach, non-linked posts that do not have any external links in them versus posts with external links. Posts with external links are achieving even a quarter of the organic reach that non-linked posts are. This is something that if you're trying to grow your social following and you're trying to drive people to your site, then that's going to be very, very difficult if you can't link out, essentially. So figuring out, well, what is going to be the content that I am going to get people to follow this social account for? And the hope is that if they follow the social account enough, A, if they see me enough in the feed, they'll eventually pop over to my profile and go to that website link. B, can we pull together enough post and enough clout to where we can take having a link out every once in a while? And I think you're seeing this work very well for individual consultants as well as larger companies. I really can't take any credit for the idea itself, of course. You know, this is all coming again from that zero-click content concept with SparkToro, and I think they've done an excellent job of figuring that out. So you've got those two distribution models, and you have to keep that in mind if you're trying to go an inbound. That then leaves your other two possible organic motions, which are partnerships and community. And these are super highly dependent on a couple of factors. So in partnerships, do you have a natural fit somewhere? You're going to have other companies that you are not competing directly against each other, but you're still marketing to the same audience. That's a whole lot of luck and a whole lot down to just the ecosystem of your space. Then with community, it comes down to how social is your audience. That's down to a lot of luck. You're going to have, especially in a lot of B2B industries, people may not want to basically have that community interaction. They may not be that motivated to join communities. So therefore, it depends on what does your audience actually want. So that's where it kind of comes down to with determining organic growth, is you have to sit down and go, okay, which of these four ways basically will work for me? Do I have the industry space, or do I have the audience space for partnerships or community to even be a possibility? And if not, I'm probably going to have to look into content, but I have to be aware with content that there are pitfalls to each distribution method that can lead to that being very, very difficult, especially if you're growing from nothing. And the big thing is there's a totally different situation for a company that already has established accounts. They already have a founder that has an established founder brand, all of that, versus a company that's starting from zero. And I think this is why you're seeing founder branding become so prevalent, is because that's a great way to get 0 to 1, is by having a founder that has grown their following up and says, you know, hey, this is building in public, this is what I'm doing, and that's going to attract people to their brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your take on that. It's all about how you tell your story and make people, more interested in your brand and then your own journey as a founder.
Noting that there's also a content type to audience match. You have some folks that basically they love consuming text posts. You have some audiences that they absolutely love consuming video. So therefore, you've got to kind of look at your audience and say, okay, well, where are they hanging out? What are they enjoying consuming the most? And then again, keeping in mind that the algorithms change on social especially. So, we're seeing a recent push with LinkedIn with video. So is that something you can take advantage of? Possibly. It depends. If you have an audience that's totally opposed to video, that they're never going to watch even a 30-second video, then probably trying to utilize a video on LinkedIn, trying to do TikTok marketing, trying to do marketing on YouTube is not going to be a good fit for your company.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's equivalent to understanding your case when you are building a product.
No, everybody's going to get sick of me saying that it all does come back to your users and your customers, but honestly, that's the crux of it. Is if you have customers who are already paying you, or you even have prospective customers that are willing to talk to you. Let's say that you're just doing discovery interviews for your product. If they're there, they're very interested, they've expressed interest in, say, signing up for a beta or something like that, then those resources for you, those are the people that you can then come and have your marketing research, which this is another point that a lot of people, we talk a lot about, I think, product research and, going through and figuring out how to build a certain feature and things like that. And then we talk a little bit about marketing research, but we don't talk about the fact that what you're trying to do with the marketing research and figuring out what the buying journey looks like, who they considered as competitors, how did they actually find you, is you're trying to figure out, okay, what worked for them. So basically, if they sat down and said, hey, I saw you recommended by word of mouth on Reddit, then congratulations, you may have a potential community motion there, because if you've got a ton of people recommending you for word of mouth, you've got a very strong product that people love. So if you can basically bring more people together, and especially bring your champions together, then that's going to lead to a growth flywheel, essentially. And that's, I think, biggest thing people have to keep in mind is that growth is not just something that you can kind of hack your way to intentionally. It is going to be totally dependent on what ends up working for your company, because you're going to have motions that you try and they totally fail. It could be due to 100 different factors. It could be due to the fact that your audience isn't a good fit for that motion. It could be due to the fact that the product isn't a good fit for that motion. It could just be due to the fact that maybe execution didn't really go well, or maybe you didn't have enough resources to execute properly at that point. So all of that, basically, I always tell people, look for what's working and see how you can build on.
That's a beautiful advice. Yeah. So I am really curious to circle back on the product market topic, because that's something that most early stage founders don't get it right, I feel. But I would love for you to talk about early stage startups that do not have a product market fit, but are focusing more and prioritizing product marketing and as a marketing strategy. Do you have any examples that you can share on this?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that, again, remembering that product market fit is kind of a spectrum. It is something that evolves, and it's something that when you're first getting started, there's different stages. I think there's a point that you should not be bringing in product marketing too early. If you have absolutely zero product market fit and you have no audience in mind, then that to me indicates that that's going to be too early for you to bring in product marketing, because unfortunately marketers are not wizards. We cannot just make something out of absolutely nothing. And if we don't know at least who we need to be speaking to, then that makes product marketing all kind of fall apart. Now, if you have a rough idea of who you need to be speaking to, let's say that basically, if we're very, very early stage and a founder has established, we're going to go after this beachhead segment, as Micah McGuire calls it. Basically, I'd highly recommend anyone into go-to-market, follow her work. Go-to-market strategist was fantastic. Her work has been wonderful. I've been following her for quite a while now. But basically, she talks about getting this kind of initial customer segment and understanding that that's kind of your early customer profile, and that may or may not be your ultimate ideal customer profile. You have to see. But if marketing is going to work, you at least need to have guidance on this is where we want to go, because if you come in and you say, okay, we've got a solution that's going to work for everyone, and we don't want to niche down and try to find that initial segment, then that's when you get the basically messaging that is, try our all-in-one purpose-built solution for Y audience that's powered by AI. That's when you get that super generic messaging, and it's because your marketers don't have the inputs they need. For marketers, those inputs are customers, and it is all of that data from your customers. So it is basically sitting in on sales calls and going, okay, I saw the customer's eyes light up whenever they saw this one feature, or every single time we get on a call, everyone's super interested in hearing about feature Y. So all of this is inputs that go into actually building this stuff out. And if you don't have enough of those inputs, you're flying in the dark, and that's why you end up with super generic messaging. So, and that, again, ties back to that product market fit question. That is, if you don't have a plan for getting towards product market fit, you don't have at least that initial segmentation you want to experiment with. I'm not saying it'll work. Basically, there will be points that you may have to jump and hop over and pivot to different segments, but you at least have to have that in mind. Now, I personally feel that product marketing is most helpful when you are close to or at product market fit, because at that point, that product marketer can sit there and go, okay, we've got enough of a customer base that I have plenty that I can pull from as far as resources and get those inputs that I need. I can validate it. to one degree or another with customers. So I can sit down, and if we've got, 10 customers that I can speak to and kind of validate how their buyer's journey went, then that's something that I can pull in and I can say, hey folks, we've validated our top 3 features are A, B, and C. So that's why I feel like product marketing is really most useful once you get close to that PM fit point. It may not be perfect. You may still have some struggles with keeping people retained. You may have kind of a leaky bucket, but at least you're consistently getting the same types of folks buying from you, essentially. And then also, it's probably worth noting that I have dealt with a lot of PLG-led companies rather than sales-led companies. So a lot of where I'm coming from is from that kind of PLG perspective of saying, hey, we're generally doing this and seeing how people are activating, what feature activation rates are working, what's not. So all of that kind of comes into play a little bit differently than it might with a sales-led motion, because sometimes with sales-led, you're doing a lot more with your prospecting, a lot more niching down on the front end with your outbound motion than you necessarily are once those customers get through the door.
Yeah, actually, I love that take, because not many early stage startup founders take this as a feedback when it comes to product marketing. So I think that you have to figure out where your product market fit is and then take a call on product marketing.
And you also have to be ready to niche down, because there are a lot of companies out there that basically, if the founder isn't ready for that, then even if they say, hey, we want to bring in, marketing, we want to bring in lead gen, we want to bring in, product marketing, that's going to be very hard for those functions to really work really well, because if there's this worry about, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by not going after our largest TAM, then basically you're going to end up, again, back to that generic messaging. So you're going to bring in marketing in general. You need to be committed to some sort of either niching down if you're already very general and basically you're just wanting to make sure that your growth, you're basically accelerating your growth. So let's say you start out with a really wide segment and you've said, okay, growth has been kind of slow, but we seem to be getting traction here and here. Then that would be the point that you want to bring in marketing. If you're going to sit here and say, we don't want to compromise our TAM, then that's going to make marketing's life and job a lot harder, and it's going to make it a lot less likely that you are going to see ROI, because a lot of this is unfortunately dependent on human psychology, and all of that is incredibly hard to measure. I know that product marketers, we love our frameworks, we love trying to do our messaging testing and our validation and all of that, but the truth is early stage, that's really hard to do, because you're dealing with usually very, very small numbers. Now, if you've got a startup that, let's say they're getting towards Series A and they've got a couple of thousand customers kinds of things, that's where it starts getting a little bit easier. Let's say if you're a really high ticket item, you've got a couple of hundred. That's where you start basically finding your footing when it comes to product marketing and actually doing that testing and things like that. But I do believe there's a certain point where you simply don't have the eyeballs, you don't have the users, you don't have the customers in order to be able to do testing properly. And this for me is kind of coming from a science background, because I originally studied microbiology. So I am always kind of looking at sample sizes and going, that might be too small of a sample size when you actually get valid data from, because it can mislead you. Now, is that to say that it's not worth doing? No, there's points that basically a lot of times I will tell startups, you can get away with anywhere between 5 and 12 user interviews for qualitative research. There's a study that specifically proves that between 7 and 12, you will generally start to hear the same thing over and over again. But I take it down to 5 because I say, 5 will usually get you to 80% of the insights you need. Now, is there 20% you're probably going to be missing if you don't do those extra 2 to 7, essentially? Yeah, there's a possibility. But if you're dealing with an incredibly small customer segment that basically you can't either are having trouble getting people to speak to you, or you just don't have a large enough base of current customers that basically you can speak to in general, then we kind of have to cut our losses and say, 80% has to be good enough.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it saves all of us the trouble of being a very generic marketing team.
Exactly.
It just helps everybody. Please don't be generic, be specific what you're targeting, what you're saying. It reflects everywhere in your business, be it early stage or be it well developed. It shows in your messaging. If you're generic, people will flag it out and they won't know what you're actually selling.
Right.
So
I think, marketing in general, we've kind of accepted that, the niche is going to win, essentially. But it's really funny to me, too, that I have seen companies that have started off very, very niche. And basically, as they've gotten more and more successful, and as they've decided to start expanding their market, they start tending towards that generic messaging. There was one company that basically I had dearly loved their messaging for a very, very long time. And then one day I popped on their site and they had gone to purpose build. And I just kind of went, oh no,
just like any other company.
Exactly. It's like, well, what happened to that really sharp messaging that you guys used to have? And I'm not sure if this is kind of a symptom of that growth at all cost mindset, where basically you're saying, in order to be able to grow, we really don't care about what vertical we're in as long as we just get customers through the door. I would be interested to see if it works for those companies or not, because it may. These companies may be at a point where they're at a tipping point that they can sit here and say, oh, we can get away with the generic marketing. I know there are super large companies out there that really, they get away with it and it's fine and nobody has a complaint. So it'll be interesting for me to see in the future these companies that have started off small and basically started off as these very scrappy teams, as they grow and start getting to that kind of, very, very established status, does that more generic message? Yeah. Does that work for them?
I think for early stage startups, it's still better to niche down.
Yes.
But for larger companies, larger enterprises, it's always better to experiment, because then you can experiment. You have that customer base that you can see how they are going to react in the coming future.
Interesting to see if those basically companies that did start off from that smaller startup status end up bridging the gap out to enterprise.
And since we are towards the end of this podcast, I would definitely want you to, talk a bit more about EmberWrite, what you're currently doing with that, and if you want people to reach out to you, the stage is all yours.
Basically, EmberWrite is a creative writing app that is designed to cut through the overwhelm of writing stories. So anyone who's a fiction writer knows that whether you're trying to write 100 words or 100,000 words, stories are hard. And there's a lot of software out there that is dedicated to helping writers, but it makes it to where it's not necessarily as easy as it should be. So the goal that we have with EmberWrite is everything we're doing is towards making the process of writing easier overall. If you would like to join us, you can visit us at EmberWrite, EmberWrite.com, and sign up for our beta there. We are in an open beta, or about to be in an open beta soon. And basically, you're welcome to join us there. And otherwise, if you're writing nonfiction or anything like that, we are also open to other use cases and seeing how those work. It's just right now, our beachhead segment is novelist and creative writers. So anyone who writes is more than welcome to join us. It's just, you may find that it's a better fit for you if you are a fiction writer.
Absolutely. I would definitely be picking your brain on this, but thank you so much, Micah, for the lovely conversation we had today, and I'll see you in the next one.
Absolutely, Shruti. Thank you so much.
Thank you.